the death of Abu Bakr.
Colonel Vindman, you attended a meeting in John Bolton's office on July 10th where Ambassador Sondland interjected to respond to a question by senior Ukrainian officials about a White House visit. What did he say at that time?
To the best of my recollection, Ambassador Sondland said that in order to get a White House meeting, the Ukrainians would have to provide a deliverable, which is investigations, specific investigations.
And what was Ambassador Bolton's response or reaction to that comment?
We had not completed all of the agenda items, and we still had time for the meeting, and Ambassador Bolton abruptly ended the meeting.
Did you report this incident to the National Security Council lawyers?
Yes, I did.
Based on Ambassador Sondland's remark at the July 10th meeting, was it your clear understanding that the Ukrainians understood they had to commit to investigations President Trump wanted in order to get the White House meeting?
It may have not been entirely clear at that moment. Certainly, Ambassador Sondland was calling for these meetings, and he had stated that this was developed per a conversation with the Chief of Staff, Mr. Mick Mulvaney, but the connection to the President wasn't clear at that point.
But the import of what Ambassador Sondland said during that meeting was that there was an agreement with Mick Mulvaney that Zelensky would get the meeting if they would undertake these investigations.
That is correct.
Thank you, Chairman Schiff, Ranking Member Nunes, and other members of the committee for the opportunity to provide this statement. I appear today pursuant to a subpoena and am prepared to answer your questions to the best of my abilities. I have had the privilege of working as a Foreign Service officer for nearly 14 years, working for 3 different presidential administrations, 2 Republican and 1 Democratic. I joined the State Department in 2006 after serving in the Department of Homeland Security under Secretary Michael Chertoff. It was with great pride and conviction that I swore an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution, administered by a personal hero of mine, former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice. As a career officer, I am committed to serving the American people and advancing American interests abroad in support of the President's foreign policy objectives. I have been inspired and encouraged in that journey by the thousands of other dedicated public servants who I'm proud.
Now, Ms. Williams, prior to the July 25th call, approximately how many calls between the President of the United States and foreign leaders had you listened to?
I would say roughly a dozen.
Had you ever heard a call like this?
As I testified before, I believe what I found unusual or different about this call was the President's reference to specific investigations, and that struck me as different than other calls I had listened to.
You testified that you thought it was political in nature. Why did you think that?
I thought that the references to specific individuals and investigations, such as former Vice President Biden and his son, struck me as political in nature, given that the former Vice President is a political opponent of the President.
And so you thought that it could potentially be designed to assist President Trump's re-election effort?
I can't speak to what the President's motivation was in referencing it, but I just noted that the reference to Biden sounded political to me.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.
The gentleman for yielding, Ms. Stefanik.
Ms. Williams, Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, thank you for being here, and thank you both for your service. As millions of Americans are watching throughout the hysteria and frenzied media coverage, 2 key facts have not changed that are critical to these impeachment proceedings. 1, Ukraine in fact received the aid, and 2, there was no investigation into the Bidens. My question to both of you today will focus on the following: systemic corruption in Ukraine, 2, highlighting for the public that by law, aid to Ukraine requires anti-corruption anti-corruption efforts? And 3, who in our government has the decision-making authority when it comes to foreign policy and national security matters? So on corruption in Ukraine, as Ambassador Yovanovitch testified, one of the key reasons why President Zelensky was overwhelmingly elected by the Ukrainian people was that they were finally standing up to rampant corruption in their country. Would you both agree with the ambassador's assessment?
Yes.
Yes.
And Ms. Williams, corruption was such a critical issue from your perspective that when you prepared the Vice President for his congratulatory call with
Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, did you discuss the July 25th phone call with anyone outside the White House on July 25th or the 26th? And if so, with whom?
Yes, I did. My core function is to coordinate U.S. government policy, interagency policy, and I spoke to 2 individuals with regards to providing some sort of readout of the call.
2 individuals that were not in the White House.
Not in the White House, cleared U.S. government officials with appropriate need to know.
And what agencies were these officials with?
Department of State, Deputy Assistant Secretary George Kent, who is responsible for the portfolio Eastern Europe, including Ukraine, and an individual from the office of an individual in the intelligence